Welcome to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters. I'm Michonne Boston.
And I'm Tequina Boston.
We're your hosts and real-life sisters who binge on historical drama.
We'll talk about films, fictional adaptations, and dramatic series as windows to the past and mirrors of the present.
So fill your teacup or mug with your favorite sip as we explore what's fact, what's fiction, and the so what on historical drama with the Boston Sisters. I'm Michonne Boston.
And I'm Tequina Boston. Welcome to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast where we talk about historical films and dramatic series as windows to the past and mirrors of the present.
Listen to past episodes and sign up for our newsletter on our webpage at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters to stay up to date on new episodes and bonus content.
Michonne and I have talked about Sanditon on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters during its second and third seasons on PBS MASTERPIECE. Our conversations with script consultant Sharon D. Johnson and actor Crystal Clark, who played Georgiana Lamb in the series, are currently among the top 3 most popular historical drama with the Boston Sisters podcasts. But there wouldn't be any Sanditon podcast or second and third seasons of this adaptation of Jane Austen's unfinished novel if not for its fans, especially the Sanditon Sisterhood. The Sanditon Sisterhood is an example of the power of fandom to make a tremendous impact around the globe.
Sanditon is based on Jane Austen's unfinished novel written a few months before her death in 1817 and was developed by Andrew Davies, who is best known for his adaptations of Jane Austen's novels for current times. Sanditon tells the story of the transformation of a sleepy fishing town into a seaside resort. The story follows the fates of independent-minded women who are making their way in a world where their social and economic status centers on making a good match in marriage. The first season of Sanditon premiered in the UK in 2019. Viewers were introduced to a farmer's daughter and protagonist Charlotte Haywood, played by Rose Williams, who arrives in the seaside town of Sanditon as a guest of the Parker family, whose futures are dependent on the success of the resort enterprise. Charlotte befriends Georgiana Lamb, a ward of one of the Parker brothers, Sidney, played by Theo James. A romance develops between Charlotte and the worldly Sidney, but it doesn't end well. ITV canceled Sanditon before its premiere on PBS in the US.
And that's when the Sanditon Sisterhood sprang into action to get the series renewed, which resulted in 2 additional seasons. Sanditon's final episodes premiered in the US on PBS in March 2023 and was available for viewing in the UK on ITV in August. A happy ending for everyone.
With so many series cancellations, how did 7 fans from 5 countries and 3 continents bring Sanditon back to screens worldwide? That's why Tequina and I invited the Sanditon Sisterhood to talk about their experience and strategies to rescue Sanditon from cancellation. Joining us in this conversation are JULIET CREESE and MONI SENGUPTA. JULIET describes herself as a 40-something longtime Jane Austen fan living in the UK. She works as an administrator in higher education. And MONI describes herself as a longtime Austen fan from Washington, D.C., in her 50s, married with kids in college and high school. She is a lawyer and works in international development. Welcome, JULIET and MONI, to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I don't know who will be going first, but tell us about the Sanditon Sisterhood and how did the sisterhood come together?
Well, I think one of the things we wanted to kind of talk about is how we, the Sanditon Sisterhood Strategy Group, are kind of a part of the whole overall Sanditon Sisterhood. The Sanditon Sisterhood is really the fandom that worked on the campaign, had been really wanting resolution to the storylines, and have been discussing in social media really since the cancellation by ITV in December of 2019. What efforts can be done. Our strategy group, which came together in early part of 2020, was a group of women who we ended up settling on people who were working on very tangible kind of outputs, so that would really focus on increasing streaming numbers for Sanditon, and for expanding the viewership, getting more people aware of Sanditon. We thought that it didn't have a sufficiently high profile to really garner the kind of worldwide demand that would demonstrate the need for additional seasons. So we decided that this group, we were going to focus on kind of an ongoing set of activities that really would focus the fandom to some extent on continuous engagement. Now there are other parts. There are other kind of facets to the sisterhood. There were petitions, and there were some other, tweet goals that people had. There were other types of, fan videos and fan fictions, and, kind of socialized activities to try to drum up interest. But for our activities were really always kind of focused on the idea of increasing viewership. And just to tell you a little bit, we understood from the very beginning, I think, that really what we needed to demonstrate was the kind of that expansion of viewership and the demand of from the audience. And I had been, luckily for me, even though I'm in the U.S., I had seen Sanditon in Europe because of my travels, and I had followed until the cancellation. And when we knew of the cancellation, we were all kind of thinking about what we could do. And we found out about the screenings that were happening by the various PBS local affiliates, of the premiere. And we noticed, or we heard, that WGBH in Boston, which is also the home of Masterpiece, was going to be having one, and they were going to have a panel discussion, including a special guest. And I guessed that the guest would be a producer from Masterpiece, and lo and behold, it was. I think her name was Erin. Erin was the producer, and I remember raising my hand and asking, trying to not spoil it for this room of 200 something people who hadn't seen it, about if they had heard about the Sanditon Sisterhood and the efforts to perhaps continue the story. And immediately after that, some people came up to me like, what do you mean you need to continue the story? And I didn't want to spoil it at all for any of them. But I ended up cornering Erin at the reception afterwards. And I said, what can we do? What can we do? She said, you have to stream. I mean, our app, the PBS app, and, the other countries, those streaming numbers are extremely important. So we need to, have viewership. But right now we have no plans whatsoever to kind of go back into production on Sanditon. And they said that's really a shame because we don't have a partner.
Wow.
Yeah, I think ITV pulled the rug from underneath Masterpiece PBS, and they made that decision even before it had aired worldwide, which I think the fans felt very frustrated about, and it just seemed to be too early a decision, because I think subsequently they sold it to about 140 countries worldwide. So the demand has been there.
Wow. How did the two of you connect? How did you find each other?
I was quite slow to join social media. So I watched the UK airing of Sanditon, and then I observed the reaction on Twitter from afar. So I think the kind of key players in the fandom came to the fore. So MONI was one, and Kat and Hannah and Claire, and you get a feel for people through Twitter. And I think the starting point of the strategy group, I think, began with a Facebook with the a Facebook page. And then there was a realization that everybody needed to be on Twitter because Anne with an E were campaigning at the same
Oh,
time.
yes,
Yes.
yes. That's
And
another
they
one we
were,
love.
Yes.
their age demographic was
Yes.
significantly younger than ours.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I'd never used social media before. So the first aim was to get people on Twitter. And when Masterpiece announced in February, was it, that they wouldn't, that they had no plans to do another series, the three core people on Twitter decided that that would be the starting point for the strategy group. We had to make a business case, and then they we kind of they then made approaches to key members. So they made an approach to MONI. I had an idea in March, just as we were going into the worldwide pandemic lockdown, that perhaps
Ooh.
we could do an international rewatch of Sanditon, do it
Ah.
in the Sunday night 9 o'clock slot, which was the UK time, but everybody around the world would be able to watch it because no one was going anywhere or doing anything. You know, they might be working from home, but they could fit it in. And it was that idea that kind of got me invited into the group, and I guess that was the starting point. But I was aware of MONI when she went to Boston, because I was really excited to see what she could find out.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I have a question about. It's interesting. I'm going to be transparent here. I used to work at PBS,
Mm-hmm.
so I have some historical memory of Masterpiece. I think Aaron Delaney
Aaron
was
Delaney, yes.
was the person you
Yes.
spoke with. It's interesting to me that the emphasis is now on streaming.
Yes.
yes.
You know, at time we're right now we're in the throngs of two major strikes between SAG-AFTRA and the WGA. Oh, and a lot of this is being triggered by the streaming. But that would seem to be a very important piece of your strategy. How were how is that measured, and why do you think they emphasize streaming in terms of bringing that into your strategy for the campaign?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think they certainly recognize that while there was a core group of people who would watch the masterpiece and on 10 o'clock on Sunday nights, that many people would be watching it on rewatches or kind of on demand or through streaming, and they were really at that point in time trying to get the PBS passport to get some traction, is my understanding, and by tying it to what they were their efforts on PBS passport and showing that and being able to kind of monitor those figures over time, I think they would feel like they would have a better sense of how the audience was moving. And so we got that information from them. And Andrew Davison had said a very similar thing when he probably knew about the cancellation, but we didn't. He was at an event, I think, in Buckingham Palace in November of 2019, and had mentioned that they needed more, demonstration of audience interest because the ratings for the broadcast on ITV had been declining from the time of the premiere until the last episode 8 in season 1. So I think that seemed to be where the production clearly knew that that was not just the future, but that was really how people are starting to consume. And the other thing is one of the facets that I think is really interesting about, for example, in PBS Passport, is that the demographic of PBS Passport is about something on the order of 8 to 10 years younger average age than the viewership of linear TV in PBS. So I think that is another part of the was part of the emphasis. But that's what we were told, that they said stream, get buzz, and make sure you have viewership. Now, around the time of the pandemic, there was a group called Parrot Analytics that started measuring kind of data on streaming, because some of the streamers are extremely non-transparent. There's really not a lot of information in terms of what they're saying in terms of their numbers and what the metrics that they're using. They're all using kind of different metrics. But Parrot Analytics was able to measure things in two components based upon data that was publicly available. One is kind of the repeat viewership, how often something was being watched, and secondly, the size of the unique users of that. But that really gave us a lot of information that when we started working on the letter writing campaigns, we were able to put in very concrete information to whoever we were pitching as fans, saying that, here's the demand. Here's the demand in North America. Here's the demand in Europe. Here's the demand, in East Asia, in Africa. We could show that and say that, there's life, not only life left in this series because of the story, but there is not just an appetite, but people really want to see a bit of a kind of a renewal and a refreshing kind of approach to Jane Austen. And I think, that was also something that really motivated us too, because I think I certainly really enjoyed what kind of the modern, not modernization, but kind of the taking the kind of chocolate box packaging around out of Jane Austen's story and making it a little bit more gritty and realistic.
Yeah. So, Julie, I was interested in the fact that you said you're not big on social media, but something about Sanditon obviously drew you. What was it about this series, and I guess it was particularly the first season, that energized you to want to do something?
It was the fact it was new and it was very fresh. I mean, I'm a Jane Austen fan, but I'm afraid I'd never heard of Sanditon. I think it was called I think her family called it the Brothers, but I didn't even know these 11 chapters existed. And I noticed with Masterpiece, when they advertise series well in advance of the air date, but ITV doesn't do that. They have like a 10-day window before the air date, before they actually advertise it. So I think it was only sort of a week before it was due to air on the TV screens that I knew it existed. And we sort of looked back through Twitter and social media, and there were a few postings about behind the scenes about this new series that was being filmed, but nobody was looking. They didn't have any likes. They didn't have any retweets. So it was definitely new. It was, as Moni says, it was grittier than the traditional Jane Austen adaptations. I think the fact that Andrew Davies was adapting it was a big appeal, because I've always really enjoyed his adaptations. I love the cast. Most of them, apart from Chris Marshall and Anne Reid, are well known in the UK, but nobody knew of Rose Williams or Crystal Clark. So that was very exciting. And the music was very different. It wasn't your traditional orchestral score. There was a lot of folk elements to it. And I think it was the fact that nobody knew how it would end. We thought we'd get the happy ever after, but we didn't. And I think one of the big appeals for myself and Moni was the fact that it was Jane's first person of colour. That is her own person of colour that she wrote, but it actually came. Georgiana Lamb came from Jane's handwrite, penmanship. So that story was very fresh, and we were just so excited to see how all these different how everybody's arcs would end.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's interesting because like you're right. Masterpiece did put out the notice way in advance. I actually bought the book Sanditon.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I
did
think
I.
that there are two versions. I think that other people have put their own endings to it. But when I got to the part with Georgiana Lamb, and I say this in the podcast with Crystal Clark, I'm like, wait, what? It was such a surprise when that character entered the story. So
You
yeah,
you can you can tell the journalists who haven't done their research, because they think that the character of Georgiana Lamb was written by the writers, by Andrew Davis and Justin Young, but they fleshed out her character and her story.
Yeah.
So, it was Jane's idea.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I mean, Georgiana's storyline, I think, was very compelling for a lot of viewers. I think it certainly attracted younger, more diverse viewers, or at least an acknowledgement, that there was an interest in who kind of the what the English community actually looked like, and I
Yeah.
certainly the kind of the long shadow of enslavement and the British role there. I mean, we had some references in Mansfield Park, but not very much else, even though we knew that Jane Austen and her family were kind of pro-abolition, themselves. And we know that it's an issue that she followed quite closely.
Yeah, it seems that Georgiana's storyline, because I mean, Jane Austen has a very diverse readership.
Yes.
And I think there's even a group called Black Women Who Love Jane Austen or something like that. And then for her to bring this Georgiana Lamb character into her writing, I think a lot of people were just drawn to the, oh my goodness, what did Jane Austen have to say about somebody like Georgiana Lamb? So yeah, I think that was energizing for a lot of folks. So generally, as individuals, the Sanditon Sisterhood kind of kept a low profile. Um, what made you decide in terms of your social media presence to go with like the sisterhood versus spotlighting yourselves as individuals?
I think we wanted to keep the attention on the goal, which was finding somebody to find a new home, or a co-producer to recommission Sanditon. We we didn't want our personalities to detract from that, and this is why we set up the Sanditon Sister Two account on Twitter, and there's ones on Facebook, and I think we've got a TikTok
IG.
account on
Yeah, you're on
Instagram as well.
Instagram.
Yeah, and we have a YouTube too.
Yeah, YouTube,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I've, we basically left our egos at the door, and that was the main thing. We didn't actually identify ourselves until, I think, was it October 21. It was way after the two seasons had been recommissioned, and I think it just helped keep the attention on the campaign rather than us as individuals. We retweeted the Sanditon
Hmm.
sister tweets, but we never actually, talked about ourselves.
So I think, I mean, what Juliet said is absolutely right, is that we wanted to keep the focus on what were the activities and how were we going to motivate kind of the broader fandom, as well as, the general public about what's happening with Sanditon, and, get that kind of interest going and to keep it positively focused on the objective of renewal. But for us as well, we had quite a bit to do, especially our three admins who kind of ran the social media accounts. I mean, we probably have, with in our DM group at the height of the kind of renewal campaign, we probably had 300 or 400 DMs, every day.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
between and that was just to kind of do background work on, do we have a guest upcoming? How do we want to frame certain things, like if we're making requests to production for kind of either statements or behind the scenes images, or maybe video snippets, or the cut scenes, those kinds of things. We always wanted to collaborate on that, and people had different roles. We kind of organize ourselves as a loose kind of company in some ways, led by our admiral Kat, and we call her the admiral.
Yeah.
Um, and but we do all, I think we all have very kind of specific roles. I mean, whether some are like really into kind of design or the marketing or kind of the engagement, others behind, kind of some of the ropey issues that come up in terms of, copyright and legal and risk, which is what I kind of focused on. And the other thing is, by keeping our personal accounts separate from SS2, it allowed for times when, sometimes controversies pop up within any fandom, right?
Of
And
course.
disputes
Yeah.
and such. And so we could use our personal identities, if we had to step in or when somebody asked us. And Juliet knows very well that I like to play the bad cop when things like that happen. So but it keeps the focus of the main account on the campaign,
Yes.
and
Right.
on what we were pursuing. And really, we wanted to be respectful of the cast, the crew, the production, all the people who had put their heart and soul into putting this series together. And we wanted to make everything that we put on the official account to be really a tribute to them.
Yeah.
And so that's why we weren't really
Yeah, we
upfront.
wanted to be as professional as possible because we were also, because we did the rewatch series and we were inviting cast and crew to participate in that and then do videos. It was very important that we remain professional in our communication with them and to build up relationships with them and build up their trust.
Mhm.
Well, let's talk about this origin story of cancellation and sisterhood rescue. So Sanditon, did some reading about this. Sanditon had low ratings in the UK. Is that right, Juliet? When it premiered,
Well, yeah,
compared to something else.
the cancellation, when ITV cancelled it, they placed it squarely at the door of the UK fans and the poor audience figures. When you look on Wikipedia, I think the opening episode had about 5.37 million views, which was
Yeah,
which was which
5.7, I think. Yeah.
yeah, which was pretty good, really. Sadly, the viewing figures did drop, and I think by the sort of last two episodes, it was less than 4 million. But I think the major annoyance for the British fans was that ITV had scheduled it up against Peaky Blinders, which
Yeah.
had just moved from BBC Two to BBC One with massive fanfare. It had a huge cult following, and
It was coming
Sanditon.
back after 5 years. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
coming back
no, it had been on BBC Two for four
for about
years,
4 years. Oh, 4 years. But
and then they were transferring it to BBC
mhm.
One, so it was going to get a massive viewership. And Jill Trevelick, who was casting director for season one, she did an interview in, I think, June 2020 for the Cornwall Film Festival, and she said when she found out where they had scheduled it in the slot, she said, she was heartbroken. She was really sad because she clearly immediately knew, and probably the rest of the cast and production knew that it was a very competitive slot, and they were probably going to struggle. So yeah, I think it was shock and then anger,
Mhm.
really, for the reason that it had been cancelled, because, as we say, I think scheduling was part of the problem, but they blamed the UK fans.
So, and what were your feelings personally at that moment where you saw the announcement that Sanditon is not going to be renewed? If you
I
can
I was
remember,
I still remember. It's one of those, where were you when?
where were you?
Yeah.
I was actually on a train coming back. I'd worked a graduation, and I was just looking at my phone, and then I saw the news, and it was kind of, my jaw dropped amongst this packed train. Um, I think I think there'd been signs, really, that the longer it went on, the less likely recommission was going to happen. And somebody on Twitter didn't live very far from Bottle Yard Studios and happened to drive past. And in it, I think mid-November, they were taking the set down because it was built on the car park. The
Mhm.
season one set was built on the car park. And there were lots of things going about saying, oh, it's bad weather, but I think deep down that showed that they'd already cancelled it. So yeah, anger, upset, shock, really, because Jane Austen stories always have a happy ever after. And when you look back at all the press over the course of the year, it was always the intention that it was going to be at least two series, a
Right.
continuous series. And the cast and the creatives that were on social media went onto Twitter, and you could tell that they were so sad about it and so upset. And I think, rather than the fans taking no for an answer, it galvanized us. We thought, no, we're not going to put up with this. It then aired in Australia, and we knew America was going to love it. You know, it was going to get the biggest
Which we
audience.
did.
Yeah,
Yes.
it did. So I think while cast and crew were up, you know, were upset that it wasn't going on, it kind of gave us an encouragement really to try and see what we could do.
Especially as sad as they were and how vocal the cast was. You know, their tweets and their, were really, they were very devastated. And you can see how emotionally the news hit them. And so, I guess we thought, well, if they feel this way, let's see what we could do to, ease their pain, right? To make them feel better as well, and then get us the continuation that we want. And as Juliet says, we're not used to Jane Austen ever ending on anything other than a happily ever after,
Right.
with everything tied up in kind of, a bow and ribbons and everything. So that was really. That was a shock in and of itself, which was, when the first series ended, and then quiet for a long time, nothing about the next series, anything about development, and then the cancellation just within weeks after that.
I remember seeing a tweet from Justin Young, and I think it may have been a tweet conversation with Kat, and she said, well, perhaps we could see if we could get it renewed. And there was kind of I think he said, well, perhaps we live in hope. There was this kind of a bit of doubt, and I don't think he really believed it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did it, because I saw the ending of it in the first season, the ending of the first season, after the news was out that it wasn't being renewed, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!
Yeah.
This can't be.
Yeah, you can't end Jane Austen like this.
Not like
No.
this."
No.
You've been enjoying Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast where we talk about historical drama series and films as windows to the past and mirrors of the present.
Visit our webpage at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters. Share this podcast. Join our historical drama community by signing up for our newsletter to stay up to date on future episodes and bonus content.
Now, back to our podcast conversation.
What was your first act or action point to get the series back? Because I know there's always a letter writing campaign involved. It's usually letter writing campaign or a petition, but I think you went above and beyond that. I think you were very strategic with even those basic elements of
And creative.
fandom. Yeah.
So we had a couple things. One, we didn't actually start any petitions. There were a few petitions that were started, and during our campaign, we certainly reminded people on a probably weekly basis to sign it, but we were not kind of administrating the campaign. And our letter writing campaign actually kind of followed some of our other activities. We were, I wouldn't say fortuitous, because nobody wanted to be at home stuck in the pandemic, but because of that, everyone was home. We were home, the creatives were home, the cast was home, everybody in the audience was home because of lockdowns, right? And also, everyone was out of contract, so they weren't limited by Red Planet Pictures contracts in terms of what they could or could not say about what they hope for the future. Certainly they have limitations of what they could say in terms of the past series, but so I think I had done a small Q&A with the author of the novelization, who, she had answered a question. I said, would you mind doing a little Q&A? And then there had been another set of Q&As that somebody had wanted to do. And then one of our members in SS2 said, I think we did those. Was it for Doctor Who? I don't remember if it was for Doctor Who.
Well, the Doctor Who,
it was.
They were doing
rewatches.
the same as basically. They were starting rewatches, but what they were doing was getting cast and crew involved. So I think Russell T Davies did one, and we'd already started our rewatches as a way of engaging the fans, and also keeping a community spirit in what was a really frightening and tough time that no one had ever thought would happen to them. And we then kind of, it was on the back of what Doctor Who were doing. We kind of said, well, why don't we approach the cast and crew and see if they would get involved, see if they could do a rewatch with us and do an hour's Q&A afterwards.
Cool.
And we were lucky at the time that there were a few more cast on Twitter than there probably are now. And Charlotte Spencer, who played Esther Denham in series 1 and 2,
We love Esther.
she was lovely. We approached her and she said yes immediately. She and Jack had actually done a very brief Q&A, I think, after episode 8 had ended, that Kat had organised. This was way before the kind of strategy group was formed. So yeah, she agreed to it, and it was great. And they slowly built momentum, and we got people every single week. And I think we had about 62 guests over about
54.
Yeah, and we had musicians. Rose Williams agreed to do one, so did Crystal Clark. We had Belinda Campbell, who's executive producer from Red Planet Pictures. So yeah, it was really exciting. A lot of our Twitter DM was
So I'll tell you a few things. I'll let Julia tell her one story, but so when Charlotte Spencer did the first Q&A, so this is how novice we were. We didn't realize that she couldn't do the watch along because she didn't have a copy of or access to the episode, and she hadn't really focused on any of the scenes that weren't hers. So we had to feed her this. We had to kind of remind her via DM and WhatsApp. This is what's happening in this scene, with these characters. And so she would write something and then she would put it on. So then we realized that we had to have a library of episodes to share with the cast, crew, production. I mean, we had the designers who did, the opening, the opening much, the paper, those designers. We've had the set designers. We had almost all the writers except for Andrew Davies himself.
And we had one of the script supervisors. And we had all of the directors as well.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had focus pullers. We had people who had really different perspectives, which really brought such great insight to not only, kind of getting us behind the scenes, but also how much work something like this takes. And, what a labor of, not just labor of love, but really how, what an enterprise it is, and how people contribute.
They're really interesting because I should think most people switch off from the end credits and don't really read all the second grit focus puller, script supervisor. But we got in contact with a lot of them, and they were all very happy to do it, and we learned so much.
Wow.
From them.
Yes.
And
we had hair and makeup, costume designers. We had, as Juliet said, script supervisor, focus puller. We had people working on who did props, the props people, and how they came up with some of those beautiful handbills that were on, the construction scenes in season 1, and just some of the behind the scenes information, the little Easter eggs that they put in there. So
in some ways, you learned more from them than you probably did from the cast members who were only focusing on their script and their part of the series. So yeah, it was really cool. And I remember after it was recommissioned and Chris Marshall was interviewed on the One show on BBC One, and he did a really nice sort of call out to the Sanditon Sisterhood and everything that we've done, and said how amazing we all were and how supportive we were. So yeah, it was great. I mean, Chris isn't on social media, and quite a lot of the cast weren't on social media, so we managed to sort of gain access to them through other means.
Yeah, as Juliet said before, we tried to be very professional, so we used IMDb Pro, we used their agents and contacts, and we kept our PPs, PR people up to date for the most part on what we were hoping to do in terms of our campaign. If they thought we would be going too far or doing something that might, create problems for them as they were seeking another production partner or something like that. We were certainly open, and we've, got feedback from them on certainly, if they thought things were too far or not, or they were within what they would like to see. But we didn't coordinate with them that way. I mean, we wanted to keep them informed.
Yeah.
And then I think, so we had those rewatches. We did the letter campaign. We had weekly gift parties to try to get more people engaged. We had a number of times that we got, clips, from the cast in particular on the anniversary.
Yeah.
For the anniversary as well as for the holiday, for Christmas holidays. So, that we were really able to keep people engaged. And, as Juliet said, I think especially with the behind the scenes people who really probably were in the worst position during the pandemic because their work went away and they probably didn't have a lot of prospects. It was really, I think they felt really validated to get that kind of recognition. I'm not trying to say that we did something very special for them, but I think they appreciated that, their contribution was something that the fans really followed. And we had such great engagement. I mean, some of the Q&A, watch along Q&A probably had about 200-300 people asking questions.
Yeah.
And the questions were just incredible. Some people really researched some questions and put those together. So anyway, but we've had a couple, like I said, we had a couple of hiccups, the one with Charlotte, and then I'll let Juliet talk about the one with Charles Sturridge.
We had Charles Sturridge. I mean, I think to start with, I think after Charlotte Spencer, we realised that the Q&As were not going to necessarily be straightforward. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there had to be a bit of hand holding. Some of the guests were more au fait with Twitter than others.
Yeah.
And, I mean, MONI has already said that she became the legal person and gave us advice on how to make public statements about various things. And I became this sort of phone person because I was in the UK, and Charles Sturridge had actually given us his contact details pre his rewatching Q&A, and I think we privately thought, oh, that's a bit okay, fine, but we didn't think we would need them. And he did the rewatch, and he was tweeting along. So the episode was an hour with the advert, so it ran till 10 o'clock, and then he was doing the Q&A, and at 10:15 he wasn't answering any questions. And I got a message.
He didn't know how to follow the hashtag, or
and he didn't know how to retweet it or quote tweet, because if you quote tweeted, then the original recipient can see the answer. Mm-hmm. And I got a message at 10:15 from Kat, and she said, "Juliet, you're going to have to ring him up." You're not kidding me. You really are joking. So at 10:15, and he'd given us 2 telephone numbers, and I tried his mobile initially and couldn't get through, and then tried his landline, and he actually did pick up. So then I gave him instructions on how to quote tweet. And this is the director of Brideshead Revisited from the 1980s. So it was quite a surreal experience. And I was upstairs because the mobile phone reception in our village isn't great. My mum was downstairs, and it was what on earth am I doing? So, but it's a fun memory to look back on. But at the time, it felt like
so we learned how to put together instruction sheets for our guests, and how to do it, how to quote tweet, how to sign into our guest account, which ended up being locked and crashed during Rose Williams. Twitter locked it because they said we were impersonating Rose because she was not using her personal account, she was using our guest account, and that. So anyway, it had been reported, and so all of those things became a little bit,
some of the guests, because the Q&A was between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, it was getting on pretty late, and some of the guests came back the following couple of days, and carried on answering the questions, which was really
how nice.
That's nice. That's right. Now Charles played it. His
He was director of
He was
episode.
a
the
director.
director. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, it's always a learning curve with the technology, and you just never
Absolutely.
know who's using it, who's not using it. And yes, I've been in those spaces too. So,
I think
So we
most
learn by doing, but yeah, so we ended up having to put together that, like I said, that instruction sheet and doing some prep work, making sure that they've seen they have access to the episode, that they're, commenting on us or rewatching and all of those things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
so
But
speaking of instructions, what skills did you learn from this experience of putting together this campaign and facilitating it?
I guess for me, social media skills, because I'd avoided it like the plague until Sanditon. Um, I also learned how well I can work with people who are complete strangers. Really, I never thought I'd make friends with people on social media. I think we were very lucky with the group of us that came together. I'm not sure the campaign would have been successful with completely different people, because we all had certain skills that we were all able to use. So organizational skills, design skills, negotiation skills, legal skills, all of those. It was a lot of hard work, especially for our admins. I mean, we were all working through the pandemic. We were working from home, so we were balancing jobs, life, and almost a full-time job, doing the Sanditon campaign. Because as Moni said, I think, did you say like 300 to 400 DMs
per day, yeah.
a day? So even if we weren't the individuals, negotiating, communicating with the cast and the creatives, we were still discussing ideas. um, I think we kept everything to ourselves as well. We didn't share anything outside the group, and that helped with the professionalism as well, to prove that we could be trusted. And
We
then,
never leaked a guest
no, not a single.
or any or for example, our big stunt, the Green Beach sand art, which ended up getting a far more attention than we expected, but was really appreciated by the crew and the cast and the production. We kept that under wraps, and Juliet, we managed to get a couple of volunteers without telling them what was happening. We also got people to contribute to the cost of it. We said that we're doing something, please trust us, this is all we need, and we got it within 10-15 minutes from
Wow.
on the GoFundMe.
I think we needed about £800 or something like that,
Mhm.
and it went up. Kat went off to have dinner, and when she came back 2 hours later, we were like, and I think we ended up with 3 times that amount in the end.
Yeah.
So yes, I was one of the volunteers who went down, so I just took steady pictures of every part of the journey. So, and these were teaser tweets for the fans. They knew something was happening that day, but they didn't know what. We didn't even tell production what we were doing. And
Because they asked us, can you tell us? And we're like, no,
we're like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, that
no.
sand art was amazing.
Yeah, it
I
was.
mean, talk about creative and like really like going the extra mile. That was
We
fantastic.
we wanted to do something that would have maximum impact for not a lot of money, because at the time the Anne with an E fans had paid for massive billboards. Was it in, I don't know if they did New York, but I think they certainly did Toronto. And we knew their fandom was far larger than ours, and there was never going to be any chance that we could fund anything like that. And we wanted to pick something that was related to Sanditon. So Green Beach was the obvious one, because you don't need permissions to do it. I think it was in 2018, on the anniversary of the end of the First World War. There'd been pictures of sand art images of First World War soldiers all around UK beaches, and that's what gave me the idea that the sand art would be a good idea. And then one of our group found Simon Beck online, who's a local sand artist. So Kat and Claire made the approaches to him, and he told us how much it would cost. we ended up not having a lot of time really to coordinate it, because we had to go with the best days for the tidal times, because Breen is on an estuary. So although it's a beach, that's a Severn estuary that comes, so we had to pick the right time to do that. So I think, we had less than 3 or 4 days to sort of put it all together. And I took the day off work and I drove down to the southwest, and the mobile phone reception was terrible down there. There wasn't any 4G, so it was a real effort to upload the photos to our Twitter DM. So I had no idea until I got home at 9 o'clock at night the impact that it had had when I collapsed on the lounge floor and looked at my phone, and it had just gone crazy. It was amazing.
The Sanditon Sisterhood campaign helped restore Sanditon for 2 additional seasons. With their mission accomplished, Taquina and I were curious to know what Juliet and MONI thought about the continuing Sanditon story and the conclusions for its characters in Season 3. Did fans get the Austen ending they were hoping for?
If you haven't seen the Sanditon series, you may want to skip to the lightning round questions to avoid spoilers. So, Juliet, we're assuming that you've been privy to Sanditon Season 3, which has already had its US premiere, but is just been released in the UK. So, how are you avoiding any Season 3 spoilers for the UK viewers?
I think, well, it's a bit hard to say, but I think there are quite a lot of UK fans who found ways
Streaming.
We won't give details.
We will not find anything from the SS2 account that encourages that type of behavior.
Right.
We were lucky with Season 2 that BritBox was co-partnering Masterpiece, so BritBox aired it at exactly the same time. I think it was sort of within less than 24 hours, so we never had that problem. There are some fans UK fans who've not seen it, but I think they've seen most of the Twitter spoilers, because there's so many GIFs, there's so many clips. The at Sanditon account published things across all their social media accounts when it was airing in America, and all the fans follow the Masterpiece account anyway, because we're very grateful to Masterpiece for sticking with Sanditon and helping to recommission it, but also their promotion is amazing. They really promote very heavily, and all the extra behind the scenes stuff was really exciting.
Yeah, I've been watching it. It's for this broadcast in the UK on your social media. So that's been very fun to watch.
Yeah, I have actually watched it on ITVX now, and I watched it over 2 days, and it's as good as I remember it. Yeah.
And MONI, since you're here in the US and you've seen it, how do you feel about the wrap up in Sanditon 3 and the wrap ups for Georgiana, Charlotte, the Haywood family, the Parkers, other characters, Lady Denham?
So I'm quite gratified by overall the ending. I mean, certainly the idea that each of our heroines has come to kind of her culmination of her journey. I would say that Georgiana's story and reconnecting with her mother and reconnecting with Otis and having a purpose, I think the 3 of them together, perhaps going forward, in terms of helping other people who've come out of enslavement and kind of helping with those efforts that Otis had as early as as Season 1. I think it was just something that would be wonderful. I wish we'd seen a little bit more of their wedding and a little bit of a post. And with Charlotte, I would say that I'm satisfied, but I'm not particularly. I feel like there was a spirit to Charlotte. There was an entrepreneurial kind of, interest and curiosity when she was into architecture and kind of farming, and kind of brave young woman who really tried do whatever she needed to do in order to really get to do the right thing, to take care of the people she cared about, all of that. And while her having a happily ever after in marriage with a baby is great, and her being having a school is really nice. I feel like that's a little more typical than I would have envisioned for the Charlotte that I met in season 1. And I really feel like we never know what could have been, but I feel like that I would like to have seen that kind of independent spirit of hers kind of carry on a little bit more. And in terms of the Parkers, I mean, poor Mary Parker, she's like has my sympathy for the rest of forever. And everybody on Twitter knows how I feel about Tom Parker, because he may be the worst example of a husband I've really ever encountered. And what are you going to do? Lady Denham, at least, one thing about Lady Denham is, she knows her worth, I mean, if you got, hey, Rowley, you can stick around, but I'm not going to marry you and give you my, give you my house and all of this stuff. You can hang out with me from time to time, but that's it. I certainly wish we had seen a little bit more of the Babingtons, but I mean, I'm glad at the end of season 2 that Esther was able to kind of complete her family and be able to kind of be happy. And certainly, I mean, I wish we had seen more of the Haywoods. I mean, we didn't see Allison and Fraser here. We didn't see the parents, who I thought were kind of fundamental to who Charlotte was from at the beginning. And it would be nice to see a full circle there. I'm not trying to criticize the production. I'm just saying that maybe my expectations were a little bit different for Charlotte at the end of season 1 and what we got in season 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think we all have, like, if we could have written it or whatever, our own happy ending kind of, with not just with this series, but any number of series, for sure.
I think a few of us felt that Charlotte was more subdued than she had been in season 1. She lost some of her agency. She still had, her ideas and what she believed in, but she was far more reserved. And I know they wrote the character as more akin to Anne in Persuasion, but I think we kind of missed that.
She was much more conflicted, I think, than we'd had seen her in previous episodes. That was interesting.
And she grieved very heavily for Sydney.
Yeah.
I know a lot of viewers grieved very heavily for Sydney.
Yes.
I mean, there's certainly a group of fans who are, really wanted the Sydney and Charlotte conclusion. And I think, let's be very honest, a big part of our campaign was to get that resolution initially. But once we knew that it was coming back and that Theo was not rejoining, we had to trust these creatives. We had to trust the Justin and all the others with whom we put so much faith in, that they were going to give us a story that was worthy of the continuation. And we felt we got that.
And another one of the other potential love interest was the architect. What was that?
Stringer.
Oh yes,
Stringer. Yeah.
Vikings Valhalla.
I would. I mean, yeah, he went. I would. He probably. Valhalla was. Great. But I would. I mean, James Stringer is a character that I would have loved to see carry on, because his storyline. I mean, this idea of the parallel working class storyline. I mean, certainly we have it in like Emma and other places when, where you have but it was that's more like noblesse oblige, right? Like Emma, goes about treating people. But whereas, Stringer had his kind of his own agency and his own ambitions. And seeing that, through, especially a male character like that going through a journey, would have been really interesting, at least from my perspective.
Well, I think that was one big difference between season 1 and 2. We lost the perspective of the working class. I mean, we saw the shopkeepers getting riled when the army weren't paying their bills, but they were hardly there. And then I think in season 3, when Mary Parker was visiting the family, her former maid. I think that was the only time then that we saw the workers, and I think we missed that a little bit.
So, Sanditon Sisterhood has done more than just uh, reconnected, gotten Sanditon recommissioned, as you said, Juliet. And you've been using your influence to support charities.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that part of the Sanditon Sisterhood.
Well, when we did the GoFundMe to raise money for the sand art, we ended up with far more than money than we ever envisaged. We also set up an online shop. We approached Red Planet Pictures to get permission to use the quotes from the script, and all the money from the proceeds from the shop go towards charity. So I think when we did the sand art, the three volunteers all picked a charity that they wanted money to go to. So I think there was I think it was Dementia or Alzheimer's UK, Macmillan, which is a cancer nurses, and then there was one I think for Jane Austen's house. But I think one of the big charities that we've been backing is the Stephen Lawrence Foundation. That's been really important to us because obviously through the pandemic, there was the Black Lives Matter, that sort of went around the world, and I think it opened our eyes to supporting these charities, and it's been a very key part. I think, and with an Eve, I think they had charities that they supported as well. So yeah, periodically we make charitable donations, and we will pick the charities, but we will ask other people for charities to recommend as well.
Excellent. So now that Sanditon has concluded, what's on the horizon for the Sanditon Sisterhood?
I guess a bit more promotion. Once the campaign
Okay.
ended, it was all about promoting. So that's what we've done for the last 2 years, and I think that's been a bit of a question in our group because this has taken over our lives. The ones like MONI who were there from the beginning, from 2019, it's coming up to 4 years. So I think it's
Yeah.
hard to say goodbye. We have eased back into our normal lives, and I think sort of there are other countries that will still show Sanditon, but I think the UK is the kind of last big audience really. So I think it's sort of take a back seat and have a rest really.
Yeah.
I agree. I think we are pretty much coming toward the end. I mean, we are going to carry through the promo, and hopefully, kind of fade into the sunset.
Well,
Yeah, but hopefully we keep our friendships.
So
I
yes,
think
yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I think
what,
now most of our DMs, our daily DMs are, well, maybe the last few weeks, but have really more focused towards our own lives and such. So I think that,
Yeah.
I think we're really part of an embedded part of one another's lives every day.
yeah,
And I think that will continue.
So maybe a reunion and meet on the
yeah,
beach and do another sand art or something.
maybe. I think that's I
Maybe.
think, I think that's been the sort of surprising thing is the friendships
Yeah.
that have come out of it, especially for us because we had to build up the trust very, very quickly, and we relied on each other as well. I mean, throughout the campaign, we discussed the ideas, but there was also, sort of some emotional support, and um, the three UK members, we've sort of met up quite regularly, and Moni came over to the UK at the beginning of July. So
Hmm.
we got to meet up with her and spend the day with her, which was lovely. And I know a lot of the Sanditon fans have made friends. There's a lot of North America meetups, and we've seen pictures of groups meeting up in Australia and across Europe. And so yeah, I think that's one of the big pluses out of the campaign besides the renewal.
I
Wow.
think it's a very special fandom. I think it's people who really sincerely love the stories and want to connect with people who have, similar interests. And we've seen lots and lots of different friendships and different groups come together, and it's I think it's gratifying, not just obviously for us just to see how the community's gone on, but I think as well for the Sanditon creatives and the cast and such, and they've all just been so lovely with with us and our interactions. I mean, Rose and Crystal especially are just darling, and have been very 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 kind to us.
Yeah, Crystal very kindly gave away her season 1 scripts.
Wow.
She did a caption competition, so yeah, that was really lovely of her.
Oh,
She sent those all around the world.
wow.
Well, I'm
What a
sure,
story.
yeah. And I'm sure you documented all of this, and people who are just learning about you today, the Sanditon Sisterhood, would love to know more. How can they connect with you?
So the best sources to connect with the Sanditon Sisterhood are our social media accounts. So on Instagram we are at Sanditon Sister, and on Twitter we are at Sanditon Sister 2. Both of those have the link to our link tree that has things that we've done, such as articles and pieces that we placed. We have summaries of many, I wouldn't say all, but many of the watch-alongs and Q&As with the cast and crew, if people want to go through those. And just a number of resources that we've had, including such things as our charities that we're working with. So those two are areas. Those two are the Twitter and IG. We're not closing those down. Will have continuous links, and that's how they can connect. And our DMs are open on Twitter. So, and we do get quite a number of DMs. And honestly, we've gotten at least one cast member who we had tried to reach out to for a long time came in quite very, very late. And when she DM'd, back to us, we were stunned. I think we were stunned,
Yeah.
right? Yes. We definitely we watch all of our DMs, we watch all of our social media, and we do have a lot of resources, as well as to some of the information in terms of what the wider sisterhood has done. Like I said, the petition and some of the other kind of fan efforts, including some of the kind of like the letters and the analytics we used.
And I think we've got on the YouTube account, there's the sort of video footage of the sand art that we put together, and Ruth Barrett very kindly gave us permission to put that to Esther Takes the Reins. So yeah, we've been very fortunate to have the support of the cast and creatives and the fans. We couldn't have done it without them, really.
So now we come to the part where we ask our guests questions related to the podcast themes of window to the past and mirror of the present. So who wants to go first, Juliet or MONI?
Juliet wants to go first.
Okay.
I'm always the one
This
who's
should probably be easy, or it might be hard since you are an Austen fan. But the question is, if you could go back in Jane Austen's time through one of her novels, which story would it be and why?
Okay. Well, I wouldn't want to go back to the Regency period because women didn't have any agency and it was particularly unsanitary. So
Just for a day, it's a visit.
to visit, it would have to be Pride and Prejudice. That was the first Jane Austen novel that I read when I was sort of 17, just before I did my A levels, and I just fell in love with her writing. And however annoying Mrs. Bennet is, I found her relationship with her husband and her daughters hilarious. So I would like to be an observer of all her matchmaking skills and do the eye rolling. But I think I would probably be a servant in the house because my ancestors were servants, so I'd be probably clearing out the fire at about 5 in the morning, ready for working till about 8 o'clock at night when I can finally go to sleep. But yeah, it would have to be Pride and Prejudice.
I love your answer.
And Taquina, isn't there a spin-off from the servant's point of view?
There is. There is
There
a
is, and
novel.
I've
Yes.
read it. Yeah, there is. There is. I think it's Longbourn,
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
and
it
I can't
is.
remember the author. I think is it Joe somebody or other. So, but yeah.
Yeah. I love the I think it's one of the maids who, when Elizabeth comes in with all the mud on her petticoats and she's like, I've got to,
Oh,
I'm the
another
one who's
field.
gonna have to clean it. It's like, and
Yeah.
everybody's Elizabeth doesn't care about mud on her petticoats. Well, is that because she's like Henry David Thoreau? She didn't have to do her own laundry, right?
Well, I don't think until I watched the film version of Emma, the recent one, that they didn't wear underwear, and that filming was kind of like,
Oh,
oh.
that's interesting. So, Moni, if you could go back in Jane Austen's time, and most of our guests will only want to visit the past, they don't want to live in the
Yeah.
past, right? If you were going back in Jane Austen's time through one of her novels, which story would you choose and why?
I would choose Pride and Prejudice as well. Pride and Prejudice is the one for me that really started it all. I was, I think, about 14 when I read it. I, for years, kept a small hardbound copy in my bag at all times, so I'd never be without a book. It's just, it to me is just the perfect novel. It is the emblematic novel. Um, but what I would do there, I mean, I'm in, South Asian woman. I'm not sure that I would go unobserved there. So I'd like to be like Rita Skeeter and be like, turn myself into like a little bug and kind of listen to, Darcy's first bad proposal and be like, dude, no, 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 don't do that.
What a great title. Darcy's first
Yeah.
bad proposal. That could be a
So,
novel
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I know.
So that was what that, yeah. I mean, it's such a perfect novel, and just everything about it is, so vivid.
Yes.
Your answers are making me think of the film Lost in Austin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That series. Yeah.
Uh, I'm next, and Moni, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
What 3 items would you put in a time capsule that reflect your life and the times you've lived through?
I would put sentimentally something to do with, my family or husband, like maybe my wedding ring or some memento of my children. But I think, and I've joked with my children about this. I would probably put that old hardbound copy of P&P that I used to carry around, which I know don't have to anymore because it's on my phone. I would put that in my time capsule because I've said you need to put that on my body when you send me to the crematorium. And then the other thing for me would be my passports because I travel all the time, and it really is a reflection of my day-to-day existence.
And Juliet, what 3 items would you put in your time capsule?
I thought about this long and hard, and I don't. I said a compilation CD of all the music that I've lived through from the 70s to now, but obviously you need something to play it on, so that there's a slight. And then the something to play it on wasn't going to be my second item. Um, I would put in a face mask just because of the torrid times that we've lived in, and just to show that pandemics don't go away. Because I think when COVID first hit, they started showing pictures from 1918, people wearing masks because Spanish flu was rife at the time. So it diseases go in cycles, and they do come back. And then I had put Sanditon DVD in, but I changed my mind when I saw Moni's and thought I should put something sentimental in. So I put a family tree in. So whoever opens a time capsule, if they can get it to a family member, that family member would know, that descendant would know where they came from. So
Beautiful.
Well, thank you, Juliet, Moni, and the Sanditon Sisterhood for joining us on historical drama with the Boston Sisters, and thank you for bringing Sanditon back for 3 seasons.
Yes.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for having us.
Okay, so in closing, just want to remind our audience that Sanditon is a co production of PBS Masterpiece, Red Planet Pictures, and ITV. For our U.S. audience and Community. All 3 Sanditon seasons are available for streaming on PBS Passport and the PBS Masterpiece Prime Video channel. Just a reminder, fees may apply. Find our past Sanditon podcasts featuring conversations with actor Crystal Clark, who plays Georgiana Lamb, and script consultant Sharon D. Johnson on your favorite podcast listening platform. Visit our website at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters for more information and resources related to this and other podcast episodes.
Subscribe to the podcast and share this episode and the historical drama with the Boston Sisters Sanditon podcast with someone you know who would enjoy the conversations. Give us a rating or review. Let us know what you think of this podcast or what historical dramas you're watching. You can also write to us at podcasts@michonnebostongroup.com. Sign up for our newsletter for invitations to live historical drama chat-ups, bonus content, and future episodes. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Like and share historical drama with the Boston Sisters on your social media.
This is Michonne Boston.
And this is Tequina Boston.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast about historical films and series dramas. Visit our webpage at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters.
Tell us what historical dramas you're watching. Who knows? We may do a show about it. Sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with the people you know who binge on historical drama.
Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters is brought to you by the Michonne Boston Group. The views and opinions expressed on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters are those of the speakers and do not represent the positions or views of the Michonne Boston Group, its clients, or affiliates. This is Michonne Boston.
And this is Tequina Boston. Thank you for listening.